Hello, welcome to another weekly news on Azure, on the Azure Centric. Another podcast happening as usually and with the same beautiful faces. Right, Andrew? We like to.
You are looking very snappy this week, I
I
must say.
have, I have.
Absolutely.
Finally, they opened the haircut, and I did a haircut that I was, let's say, overdue. To be polite and to
Well,
be
it happens, right? So these are interesting times. So I think of, we do our own kind of personal maintenance, but now we're a lot like the overworked system administrator, and unfortunately, we're like the Windows 2008 R2 servers. Sometimes we get a little shaggy.
yes, absolutely. But let's start with thank you for listening the podcast and for seeing the podcast. Without you, we were not here. To be very honest, or probably we were, but with
Well,
not with
we'd
the
still
same
be our
support.
crazy selves, but we wouldn't record it for fun, though,
Yes,
right?
we not with the same support that we have right now. We like to always joke aside and or to just play a little bit, but yes, this week, oh my God, they decided to work again,
Wow.
right? Azure,
Yeah, I don't know. Everybody woke up with all the coffee after Christmas vacation and
yeah,
such, and back with a big boom. So we had like 26 or 27 updates or something we were reviewing.
yes,
And I guess fair disclosure for viewers and listeners, we have done the old Homer Simpson routine. Millhouse, you're cut. Bart, you're good. You can stay.
yes. There were some that were not at least in our wheelhouse, and again, the idea over here is just not to go over the news just because they are new updates. It's for us that we work on the field to give the feedback, not the feedback, to give our, in this case, our perspective of working on the field on these updates and how they can influentiate, in this case, you that are listening and viewing the podcast. Um, on the better way for you to just implement this and how is those applicable, because sometimes we have a lot of previews that is really interesting. It's the one that I love to talk about it because they come out of development, they are on preview, so they want us to just start using, and a lot of things that we need to start working. And a lot of times we read it at the title, and even for me, I have to go a little bit more deeper to just understand what they are, especially on the previews, what they are doing. And I think this podcast helps because we talk about our experience with either the product or where we see some of those. I don't say more like missings, right? Like the part that we see in haste, I think is a better way to say it. Um, on
Exactly,
the
right. So
pictures,
we put our own spin on it, and just like we would chat if it was you and I doing our regular video chats or phone call or
yeah,
something, we just put a little bit more
absolutely.
topical restriction to it. And I know it's tough to keep me reined in on these
It's
things. So
it's
it's
not only you. It's not only you. It's me. And by the way, I was talking to a good friend of mine that I'm mentoring as well, and he said that he loves because he feels that he's part of this conversation. So
oh, that's awesome.
very good feedback. That's the type of feedback that I like it because the people can almost be involved on this recording. But basically,
Well, that's
what we are
good.
doing is once a week we are having this conversation and about Azure, about the updates. And because we are an infrastructure guys, we are not developers. That's why we had to cut all of this. Sometimes, even on the other weeks that we have less than these updates, we cut them as well because I'm not comfortable talking about this and to you in this case that you are seeing and listen the podcast. I don't think it's a good way to have the news. We are not CNET.
Yeah, so
right?
we do try to keep it a bit focused. We do definitely edit the topics that we're going to include. So, if you need or you want to hear or read about all of the updates with Azure, 100% use Bing, go find the blog, go find the Azure updates.
Exactly.
And they have great blogs from Microsoft on these things that they update, near real time, I think, sometimes.
Absolutely.
And go and look at the full lists by all means. And I would encourage you to do so even if you don't, because then you're going to see how many updates are really and truly coming through in the Azure kind of ecosystem as a whole. Because what we touch on, like you say, we do a little piece and we talk about things that are kind of not necessarily in our wheelhouse, but things that impact us and are in our area, right? So you're trying to impart the good knowledge to me about staying a little bit more focused with some of our content. And I'm comfortable saying that out loud for all of our listeners and viewers too, because I think anybody that's listening to my stuff clearly knows that I talk about lots of topics, as do you. And sometimes it's tough to stay focused, because one of the cool things about Azure is that we integrate so many of the things with it, right? So there's lots of other pieces. And so we're going to attempt to stay within, a certain boundary, right?
Exactly.
But that said, maybe I'll kind of bump us into the
Before
first topic
of that,
here then. Right?
I would like to just start, before starting, I would like to request some of the things for our viewers. So if you still like what you see, don't forget to subscribe. It's important. And don't forget to like us, and any questions that you have, anything that you want, just leave a comments below, or find us on this case on the our Twitter, emails. Everything is available. Just find us and share with you.
That's a good point. And we don't want to hear only the positive feedback. And by the way, thank you to your other colleague and friend that you're working with. That's fantastic. I love to hear stuff like that.
Yeah.
But as you and I talk throughout the week, we also like to hear about some of the things that people want to see or wish that they saw.
Although I did cut my hair, but I didn't receive any feedback, or bad or good, that my hair was too big, besides my wife. But that's okay.
See, I cut mine once a week. I've done it for like 25 years now. So
I don't have those skills, and I have way more things.
It's not a skill. You lean over a bathtub and shave. There's no skill involved, which is why it's easy for me.
So let's jump into this now that we do all the housekeeping. First of all, Azure Backup. Encryption at rest using customer management keys is now in generally available. So means that now, besides the keys that they are generated by Azure, right, you can use your own custom management keys to just doing the encryption on Azure Backup. So
exactly, yeah, we've been waiting on this one for a while. Customer managed keys has been around for a long time for different things, and now it's arrived as well to Azure Backup. So it's a big deal, because especially as we move vertically with different Azure products like confidential computing and things like that, targeting healthcare in, I guess, again, Azure Healthcare, right? That's a vertical as well. So there's lots of different applications that you can use this in, and I use that word a little bit carefully. Maybe, it's not necessarily for apps, it's for Azure Backup, but different ways you can use customer managed keys. So yeah, it's kind of a big deal. Certainly Azure Backup is one of the stars of the show, I think. So, but like the unsung hero, right? Nobody ever appreciates the backup and restore system until they need it. And then they wish that they were testing it. But Azure Backup is one of those things that kind of floats around.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah, we've been through, you and I, we've been through a couple of restore situations over the years. And, I think Azure Backup is definitely one of those ones that doesn't get enough credit publicly, I don't think. It's a fantastic product because there's almost nothing to it on our side to use it, right? We just turn it on. Once in a while, we check it, we validate or restore, and it just works. Exactly. It really is an awesome platform, right?
Absolutely. So, but what I want to add on this is, with this, and especially with the custom management keys, I seen a lot of organizations that they did invest on HM models, right? Those ones that you have encrypted keys on your house, in this case on-prem, and they're investing on that, and sometimes because of a lot of policies that they need to be compliant with, special That's security right. ones. And right now, that was one part that they did it because it was only on the platform managed keys, in this case Azure platform managed keys, that was available by default, and that's continuing by default. So means that if you enable your Vault and if you enable the encryption, by default is with the platform. Okay, so if you want your customer keys, in this case your keys, to be the ones to encrypt, in this case the volumes, or to encrypt the backups, you need to switch from platform to the customer. And that's just kind of adds up for you that you are listening and viewing the podcast, that is the part that you need to do it. Although it's a very nice way that Azure Backup is doing all of this, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So, typically the default is going to be to the Azure side, the Azure platform for different things. And then the additional options or something you have to enable is going to be the customer managed options or something a little bit extra that's on top of the defaults, right?
But Azure Backup did have another update. And this one is in preview.
Yeah, there was the backup for managed disk in limited preview now, right? So it's out in limited preview. And again, this one's pretty cool. So you can use backup policies. You can easily manage the disk snapshots. And without additional infrastructure cost, you can start to take advantage of the managed disks in there, right? Like get those into your backups now. So it's a little bit easier. And there's lots of different points in there. So you can do, of course, the more frequent and faster backups without interrupting the virtual machine. And that's one of the key benefits to the managed disks, right? When it comes to Azure Backup, is the principle was a little bit about the machine can stay running, and then you can snap the backup of it, but it stays fully functional. I remember the days of running the VM. You're taking the snapshot, and if you're in the interface or you're in a console with that machine, it hangs, and you're kind of wondering like, okay, what's going on? Is it frozen? Nope, it's just kind of hanging a little bit with the snapshot. Now that is a thing of the past, right?
And it was not only that, because we're talking about Azure Managed Disks. So Azure Managed Disks, you are not managing anything. You are just managing the creation and the size of it. Everything behind is managed by Microsoft. So even the other option that you have is to create your own disk to put on your storage account. That was the very old times and the first time that we have disks. Now the new way and the default way that when you create disks is Azure Management Disks, but you could not do anything besides, like you mentioned, snapshot to the VM. Right now, you can back up Azure Management Disks, although it's still limited preview. So please do not use this, and especially this one, because this is his limited preview. It's not public preview.
That means that the features might not behave the way we expect them to. It's still just in the early stages of the preview. Even. So it's just released. It's very fresh, right off the presses. One of the other things that I thought was really excellent in here is you get the app consistent backup with it, right? So there's different things that can help with this. usability for this feature. And I look forward to kind of reading a little bit more about it when it comes out to even general preview. Hopefully we'll get a little update on that.
What I like about this one, and this is the part that I miss a lot, and is one of the points when I read this I was really happy, is the part of the shared disks. Because it's really keen for if you have a cluster, either a Linux in this case or a Windows cluster, is to back up that managed disk. That you couldn't do it before because it was a disk that you have shared across multiple VMs. You could see the disk, but you cannot do anything. And right now you can back up that disk. That is sometimes crucial, especially on the cluster on Linux. That is where you have all that information and where is based all of that part of it. So that is one of the things that I like very much on this.
Exactly, and that's a common scenario, right? So we see that a lot at clients because you're going to have different, especially web-based apps, right? So I think of things like Jira or whatever, and you may have a shared access, like a shared disk that's accessed by multiple VMs serving different components within that. And this is what we're talking about, right? So there's like real world applications for this.
Exactly.
And the other thing in here that I thought was really cool is, once again, agentless, right? I was kind of humming and hawing. Should I mention it? Should I not mention it? No. And it's like, you know what? It's exciting because one of the bigger pains is, when you add in things like Sentinel monitoring, or you've got different stuff going on. You have all these agents about agents about agents. This one doesn't require anything. It's a feature. You're enabling it, and it just blends into the background completely and helps back up the data on the managed disk. Fantastic.
It's not only that, because the only option that we had before doing the backups is to install the agent that does the backup of that volume. Let's be honest. That's only the before, when they announced this, that was only our option to, if we want to back up those type of volumes. With this is an infrastructure, in this case update, that allow us to do that on the background. So pretty cool that we have that on the backup in this case, right? Speaking in preview, or talking about, in this case, previews features, Azure Monitor ITSM connector for ServiceNow, the ITOM with secure export. So this is is in public preview. I have to say, this is very good news if you want to use, in this case, the secure export. That is the new version that is in public preview of the ITSM from Azure Monitor. Now you can connect to the ServiceNow IT Operations Manager or Management. Sorry, I'm too familiar with System Center Operations Manager, and for me, when I see ITOM, I always think about Operations Manager, but not. Absolutely. It's Operations Management. Let me be clear.
That's
on
correct.
that.
Yeah. So ServiceNow is very popular, especially with automation, right? So what we're talking about here is another step of integration with ServiceNow, enabling big organizations typically that are deployed heavily with ServiceNow, but enabling them to further integrate into Azure and getting better data, really, right? So now we're going to be able to take that Azure monitoring data.
Alerts, yes.
Exactly, right? So we can not just implement alerts, but then you can use ServiceNow for different automations. Something is down, you can try, bumping the VM again. Absolutely. Or whatever you need to do, right? So yeah, there's a really cool step there. So I think that one's going to be a nice step forward. Anything that we can automate, especially when it comes to monitoring, is really important, because that's it's always customer facing, and one of the things that in general administrators always have to battle is making sure that the customers are happy.
Yeah.
So this goes a long ways to enabling admins to be able to do that, right?
Yeah. And the part that I like
A little
about
bit
this
of automation goes a long way.
is now Azure Monitor alerts are triggered automatically on the ServiceNow, so then they can have whatever they want to have it on the CMDB and everything else. But what this secure export architecture introduce is new capabilities like Azure AD authentication and a new action group. So now you can have the Azure AD integration into ServiceNow, so they can use that to integrate on the ServiceNow as well as a CMDB integration as well. And in this case, the alerts, they can use webhook actions in groups, for example, that you can starting trigger other things in order to use the Azure AD on ServiceNow. So we are starting to see the integration of a cloud platform like ServiceNow with a totally infrastructure platform that is Azure through this secure export using Azure Monitor alerts to just do it. Because let's talk about this. In this case, on the ITSM solution, one of the key importance is, of course, is the CMDB. But the CMDB just give you all your assets, basically. Let's call it this way, right? You have all of the assets, depending on what you have, the routers, the switches, the computers, the users, the printers, everything
in
right?
there, right? It's the documentation that is the IT business,
exactly.
Right?
But then if you have any problem with any of those, especially on user side of it, on the computer side of it, on the networking side of it, depending how you set up Azure monitoring, and in this case, the alerts coming from there, it's going to trigger something on ServiceNow. So very happy with this. I didn't play with this, but I know that I have a very good friends of mine that they are dedicated with ServiceNow. They will now be able to work even more with Azure. And that's really, really good in this case, right?
Absolutely. Well, of course, yeah. So anything that integrates from monitoring back into the CMDB using automation tools like ServiceNow, the different modules, like you were saying, so, you have a router go down, that you're going to have a bunch of things that are unreachable behind that system, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you're going to be able to alert on that. You can get to the right team. You can get the right people involved to correct those infrastructure problems or software problems, depending on the monitoring, very quickly. And, either eliminate impact to your customers and your clients, or at least reduce it, because it's going to be quite rapid, right? So that the integration with ServiceNow, I'm finding, is really critical. And one of the clients I'm working with now actually uses ServiceNow for a lot of automation like that. So very interesting. I have my ear to the ground on those different integrations, and I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Moving on, confidential computing using Always Encrypted with secure enclaves now in public preview. So confidential computing, it's not new in our podcast. It's one of the topics that we like to talk about it very much, because especially when we're starting to see this new vertical that you mentioned already, that is Azure Healthcare or Azure Cloud, or in this case, the Cloud for Healthcare or Microsoft Cloud for Healthcare, whatever is the name.
I don't know. It's damp. There's a lot of clouds.
Exactly.
I'm not really sure
we're starting to have a lot of
is,
clouds.
but,
That's completely. Because last week we introduced the cloud, or 2 weeks ago, we introduced the cloud of, not introduced, we announced in this case and talk about the cloud for retail. We had the cloud for healthcare, and now we have this confidential computing. So again, moving forward, that Always Encrypted. So means that right now we are expanding this confidential computing to Always Encrypted. So no matter what, by default, and that's the part that I like, by default, if you're going on that route, it's encrypted.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're really talking a lot here about Azure SQL databases. We're talking about SQL Server running on Azure VMs. So encryption is really critical. And like you mentioned earlier here today, you know, there's a lot of different business requirements sometimes, right? So quite often it's encryption of data at rest and data during processing. So confidential computing, definitely one of the big deals is it's always encrypted no matter what we're doing. But also, you know, we want to make sure that the databases themselves are using as much encryption as possible, but without adding a lot of extra overhead. And that's really what a lot of these newer innovations are about in these platforms, right? So just enabling businesses to keep things encrypted, making it easy to stay in compliance with these different requirements like HIPAA, very complex and sometimes difficult, right? So especially if somebody's like an organization rather is coming from non-compliance trying to get compliant, there's a lot of uplift for that.
Absolutely. Now talking about Azure Cosmos DB, and we have a few updates regarding this. It's very interesting to see that a lot of those products are getting a lot of updates. Azure Cosmos DB Management with our very good friend PowerShell. It's now generally available. We could not miss this one, although we are not data scientists or data engineers, but we could not miss.
But it's a very popular platform, right?
It is.
So and a lot of people we know are working with big data, but also a lot of organizations that we engage with have questions about not just using it. So we may not use it, but we may advise on how to manage it and how to enable the database admins or the data scientists to work more efficiently or more securely. So it's really good. Anytime I can move things to command line, especially PowerShell, I'm always going to have a big smile.
Yes. I had a conversation with another MVP another day saying that, you know, Marcus, you should upgrade your PowerShell knowledge to CLI. But I say, you know what? I love so much PowerShell. I will learn. I already started working with CLI a lot, but I think I will never abandon PowerShell. It's dear to my heart in this case.
It is,
and I think I did pass that passion to you in this case. And the part that I like about this is a PaaS solution. Okay, let's talk about that. And now it's manageable through PowerShell. And it's not only the last version of PowerShell. They really did a good job. And I have to say this, especially now on our podcast, you can use the 5.1, the version 5.1. Now, not the 7.1 that we mentioned. That was the last one.
No. Yeah, so not the brand new PowerShell.
Not the brand new PowerShell. But you can still use the 5.1 and the 6 or the 7.
For PowerShell Core.
Exactly.
Yeah, 6 or 7 for PowerShell Core.
Yeah.
And 5.1 for Windows PowerShell, which is important, right? Because Windows PowerShell 5.1 is what comes packaged generally on the server kind of default install, right? Exactly. So, of course, please make sure you're patching. Very important. So, you know, you can use things like Azure Updates, WSUS. There's lots of kind of free and low-cost solutions to do that. There's also, you know, very complex ones and comprehensive ones, I guess, is the word I'm looking for. Not necessarily complex. Please forgive me, all Intune administrators there.
But continuing talking about Azure Cosmos DB, the like keyword is support. It's now general availability. I have to say that it's not my best knowledge on Azure Cosmos DB, but I want just to bring that because it's an efficient way to test search queries in Azure Cosmos DB Core, in this case SQL Core API, using the like keyword. So if you are familiar with Transact SQL and you're doing a lot of queries with like, now the like keyword is supported on
Azure Cosmos DB as well. Yeah, and you know, I'll be honest, I did not actually realize that it wasn't supported ahead of this. So I thought this was a really cool update. And as we read a little bit about it and we talked, I think for about 15 seconds on this
Yeah.
before we hit record tonight, I thought it was really cool because you know, it's one of those things, like you said, we take it for granted a little bit
Absolutely.
in Transact SQL. And when I think back to working with SQL Server and Transact SQL queries so heavily in one of my previous hat roles there, you know, it's something that you really do rely on a lot just for a quick test. You know, certainly you don't want to, you know, pull a huge set of data, so you want to apply those filters. So very important, but now a little bit easier in Cosmos DB, right?
Exactly. And continuing with Cosmos DB, now it's multi-region availability support with a single region right now is general available, and that's a very cool thing, because right now you can increase the availability of SLA, and that's really, for me, when I read this, I see that you have like 99.995% of SLA on the single region
In single region.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so even if you have availability zones supported on a single region right, um, that means that you can increase this SLA on a single region. Um, and right now it's although it's not for all the regions that is this is available, right? If I'm not mistaken, you have
No, it's not in every
no.
region, but yeah, it's important to note because I want to finish that thought a little bit with you. So we go from a single region with no availability zones, 99.99% availability, right? But when you implement multi-region with multi-region rights with availability zones, this new feature, you add a 9. So it's now 99.999% availability. That is a very large
Yes.
increase. Uh, you know, to get that third and that fourth 9 is very, very difficult to
Oh yeah.
chase. So this is actually kind of a big deal, but it's also now, of course, geo
Yeah.
redundant, right? Which is a really great feature of these multi-region
Yeah.
availability zones. And you know, I was having a conversation this week with somebody on that, or rather, I was part of the conversation with the team. But you know, we were talking about the different features as corporations move from on-prem with multi-data centers in different regions and consolidating the resources as you know they modernize the infrastructure into Azure. And it's a really interesting conversation because it's not always completely obvious that you can go multi-region with availability zones. So I just think it's something that's really worth exploring. So certainly, if you're using Azure Cosmos, one of those things that you want to kind of take a look at, and the reads and writes. The Microsoft Doc article linked out of that update is fantastic. It's a
Absolutely.
really good read, even if you're not using Azure Cosmos DB, which I'm not. But again, you know, we're not DBAs these days. That's not the hat that we wear. So this is a really cool thing.
I
So
don't
this is
use
a
any
way we can
hat,
help.
so
I have to wear a hat in the summer, as you know, because the sunshine, there's nothing
I
there to
just
stop it.
escape
So
from the sun and goes to the shadows. Like
as you know, I'm solar
I
powered. I did
know,
not
I
realize
know
it until
that.
a couple of years ago.
I'm on. We have a project this summer that I
We
challenging
do.
you to just kind of bring that solar panel. So I have to use a hat because of that, but that's okay. Moving on, talking about Kubernetes, one of my favorite services on Azure that I've been playing lately a lot. So public preview
Hmm.
again, so this is good. Azure Key Vault S or CSI, nothing to do with the series, okay? But CSI driver support. It's now on the AKS, the Azure Kubernetes
You
Services.
might actually get me to watch TV if there was a CSI Azure. Just putting that out there.
If someone in Hollywood is listening to this podcast, please, we just want some kind of sponsoring. We will appreciate that. We don't want royalties, nothing like that, but some kind of
Oh, we're not in it for that. Maybe a free hat for Marcos to help him out in the summer. That'd be good,
exactly.
Right?
Or a huge umbrella for Andrew.
Although, if I'm not mistaken, I think if we did that, you'd have to check one of those boxes with YouTube to say that you had a sponsorship. I think, right?
Yes.
The free hat box.
Yes, probably that. So, probably invite us to just participate on the series. Like, we can pretend that we are working on a computer, something like that. Whatever it is, right? We are open to new challenges.
I knew it was going to happen. I knew it.
Okay, we already deviate from this. Let's get
we
back.
Did. So my apologies for that. But it is another big deal because again, it's a good update. Though it's in public preview, right? But Azure Key Vault is a really awesome tool, and now further integration with Azure Kubernetes.
Yeah.
So I know you've been working a lot with Kubernetes. Does this apply to what you've been working with?
Yes, it does, because now we can have this secrets content storage. I think we already mentioned that on this Azure Key Vault, the importance on one of those podcasts that we mentioned, that we talk about it. It's really important because now the secret storage CSI driver integrates to mount secrets into the Kubernetes pods. So what we are saying is basically every time that you need some kind of access or some kind of user or some kind of service account or some kind of application service account, any type of that, you can leverage this driver, the CSI driver, to just go to Azure Key Vault and grab those credentials. So your deployment becomes way more reliable. You don't need to reduce your security, reduce your, in this case, or increase the vulnerability of your deployment because passing, in this case, all of these credentials. So you just pass that, and now when you're deploying this, you can grab from the Azure Key Vault, right? And that's really important in this case for me. But I think this, again, it's public preview. I don't think I mentioned on this podcast, but I think if you are...
You know what? Have we told people how dangerous public preview is? I don't think we've ever talked about it.
Let's say that you are the first time that you're seeing this podcast, and now I'm talking to you directly. So if you are...
I'm listening very closely here.
Please do not laugh because this is serious, okay? Public preview is not to use in production, okay? Let's cut the chase over here.
I'm going to be edited.
We have a very big podcast, and I think we already covered. But public preview is not used in production. Worst case scenario that can happen is they can change this, like we mentioned on the limit preview, for example. Public preview, it's a little bit more stable than limit preview, because limit preview, first, you don't have the full fixture available. On public preview, you theoretically have the full fixture available. That's going to be on generally available after that, but they can change. Although when they make this service generally available, almost all the time you need to redeploy. So if you are using this on production, and some of the services, it's okay to use because it's not really impactful. And if you redeploy, you are not having any downtime. On this case, you will have. So you need to redeploy.
That's right.
Because you are using AKS, you are deploying this, you are calling this service, and they might change, and you need to redeploy this. So be careful with the public preview.
We want to be careful with that, especially with things in the security realm and in automated deployments.
Yes.
Because if you use any preview, limited preview, public preview, Bob's preview, it doesn't matter. it's still in preview. And like you're saying, Matt, what I envision here is, let's say we use the Key Vault, and then all of a sudden we have automated deployments happening because the keys, everything's fully automated. That's why we're using Kubernetes, right? So, we can do infrastructure as code, and we can work automatically a little bit faster. So we've talked about the different integration points with that. Imagine this is all mapped in your CMDB. All of a sudden, your key vaults go down. Now things aren't being authorized. You've got account errors rather, and all of a sudden, you get this message from your ServiceNow, for example, and it's telling you, hey, you have authentication errors. This is down and causing these other services to go down because we used something in preview. So it can be avoided easily. Don't use preview in production. Microsoft will tell you that. I think a warning comes up every time you click on those things too, in the limited preview at least. And do pay attention to that. I know we talk about this once in a while, but it's because it does still happen.
Absolutely.
Every tenant almost we look at, there's something like this that has happened.
Absolutely. And just to reiterate that or reinforce that, even today I was answering a call from a customer that's saying this stopped working, and says why stop working, and then we went, and then it's a lot of time involved to try to understand why it stopped working, until someone saying, but last week we were doing this and were in preview and now it's GA. And I say, okay, you already answered all the things that I need to know. You need to redeploy everything again. But everything again, you were using a preview feature on that. I will not disclose in this case what was the service, but now it's GA, and they change all of this. And I'm sorry, but that is what preview means. Is you need to redeploy it.
And that's why it's important, right?
Exactly.
So all of the administrators, all of the Azure administrators, Azure architects, anybody administering things in Azure, you need to understand when that warning comes up and it says, hey, this is previewed, please don't use this in production. They really do mean it. It is a big deal, because when it impacts production, now that can lead to a negative view of Azure services in the client's eyes. So we need to be aware of those things and just be careful when we're designing these solutions. We can be excited about previews, but in dev test, please.
And let's talk about...
Okay, enough said.
Let's talk about general availability on AKS. So a new update, optional uptime SLA for AKS, Azure Kubernetes Service, on private clusters. So again, we're starting to see this at uptime, like we mentioned in this case on Azure Cosmos DB. For example, they went from 3 nines to not 4 nines, but almost. It's 99.9, that was it, and now it's 99.95. So increase the availability.
That's a big improvement.
It's a big improvement. Although there are costs associated, I have to say this. Okay, of course that you can select, because now you have 2 SLAs that you can select, the 99.9 and 99.995 that you can select on the private clusters on the uptime SLA. So that's really good. It makes AKS, that is one of the most growing features of Azure, and one with great adoption. And these private clusters means that, do you know what that means in this case?
Well, why you explain that for us? I was actually looking at the costing estimates.
So I caught you off guard.
A little bit,
that's
perhaps.
Okay.
Here.
That's okay.
So we want to talk about the difference between the private and the non-private, right? So for all of the first-time AKS people, What does that actually mean, Marcos? What does it mean that something is non-private?
Something is not private. It's public.
Well, it's public, right?
No, it's.
We weren't asking a dirty question by any means.
I think we are.
You gave me a bit of a funny look there, and I thought,
no,
I say
that's
that the
okay.
way I thought I meant it?
No, that's okay. The part of the private clusters, it's where you configure all of your clusters. So depending on way that you deploy AKS, right? In this case, this is Azure Kubernetes Services. You can have your private clusters that you can build your infrastructure, and it's your private cluster that you are not sharing, or you are not using the service with anyone else. So it's your private cluster. It's like your, let's say, your VM in a way of is, right? And then you can use the non-private clusters that basically is you are sharing that, you are just consuming the pods, basically. On the very simple way to explain it, it's that, okay? And that's the part that is interesting about this update. Moving on to the next one, and now talking about another public preview. We have a very big agenda. It seems that we are running, but we are not. It's because we still have a very big agenda, and I'm starting to see a lot of those tabs that we didn't fill yet, and I start to get a little bit concerned about time and respecting you that you are listening and seeing this podcast. I definitely have to implement these the chapters on this one, but that's okay. Public preview.
Yeah, so let's talk briefly about this, right? Because then the public preview of Linux Diagnostics Agent 4.0. So really, we're talking about improved diagnostics. They've upgraded the agent, and it means that just really we want to validate these things in a testing environment first. There's a lot of stability and bug fixes for the patching in this version upgrade. And like any version upgrade, we don't ever test on prod first. But in addition to that, this release is also in public preview, right? Yes. So we have to be kind of twice as careful. So do it on a test system for sure. Yeah. But, think about upgrading from the previous one. There's going to be a lot of performance and enhancements in this patch. And they've also, there's a removal, right, in the notes for this update. They removed OMI for a modified version of Telegraph. So
the part that I want to increase, or the part that I want to raise is, this is a major version upgrade. It's a 4.0.
It is. It's a big upgrade.
So means that it will not be automatically applied. Okay. So that's you correct. Need to reset to update manually, because this is a major version upgrade. That's the part that I want to just reiterate, because it's a huge update that they are doing. So you need to reset this once again manually. It's not going to be that, and again, it's public preview, right? I think we already killed that too many times regarding public preview. Continuing talking about Azure Monitoring Logs, changes in Azure Monitoring Logs for Azure Diagnostics table, it's now available. So what does that mean that you are one of the principal guys on Azure Monitoring Logs?
Principal guys, I don't know about that. I usually get called to the principal more than that. So it had a global limit of 500 columns for any given table, right? And now for a lot of the tables, there's usually more than that that's required. So Azure Diagnostics, due to what Microsoft says, a large variety of data types being sent into it, will exceed this limit many times. So now we're able to grow that a little bit, and it's going to make it more flexible. We can send more data in. It can handle more columns, more information coming in, and that's good. So I rely a lot, as you know, for a lot of the work I do on analysis and reporting of log data, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of Sentinel stuff, log analytics, system events coming in, all these things. So sometimes you can have hundreds and hundreds of columns in those tables, and especially for if you think about security events. So if you're doing security events, say on a Linux server or a Windows server, you can easily hit 600 or 700 columns of data coming in. And now we're going to have a little bit more flexibility with that, right? So I think that this is a really good update. It's very positive, and there's a little bit more to it than just the columns. But now we have overflow, right? So when we exceed that 500, it's going to hit the overflow column, and we're going to be able to actually capture more data. So it just means that we'll have to adjust queries on the other side. So if we're using workbooks or whatever to visualize these data sets, that we adjust our queries, because now we can use an overflow column, and we can actually get to, say 501 columns, right?
Yes, we can address that manually, and that's the part that it's really keen about that. About this update. I like that very much. And continuing talking about Azure monitoring, now we have the Azure Monitor Network Insights. It's now generally available, and this is pretty cool, I have to say.
Yeah, so this is interesting, right? So here we're talking more about no agent configuration again. Mm-hmm. And better access to health states, metrics, alerts, and all the different data for traffic coming in with Azure Monitor for Network Insights. Now, one of the things that I hear often from my clients is dashboard fatigue, right? Yes. So there's a lot of data that we collect when we're doing logging. There's certainly Azure Monitor relies quite heavily on looking at those logs and then alerting on the logs, right? So again, it's another data collection. So if we have all these different dashboards, where do we actually find the data? In this case, it's very nice. It's a single console for network monitoring. Yeah. So it's integrating back into that console for network insights. We're not adding another dashboard. It's the same one. So I thought that was kind of worth a bit of just a kind of a 15-second mention or whatever that was.
Absolutely.
Don't mind my IT time. It was probably
that's okay.
10 minutes.
What I like about this update is, and we talk about this a few episodes, is now that we can integrate, or like you mentioned, on a single console, the flow logging for NSGs. It's, for me, it's one of the things that we really need to know. And if you are familiar with the flow, in this case, for NSGs, you know that it's a bunch of IPs that is going, and you're seeing what's coming, what's going on, what's coming out, what's going in on that particular NSG. And now we have a dashboard, and now we have a console. That's the part that excites me the most in this case.
Just came out last week, right?
If it not was last week, it was the week before. So
yeah, it was quite recent.
And now we can see this on a dashboard, because oh my God, right. If you ever work with flow and this logging of flow logging, it's a lot of data, just to see it. And now you can build the console, you can build all the filters that you want into this. Very, very cool. Right. Very pleased that this is coming to Azure Monitor, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's that constant evolution that we're always dealing with, right? So moving kind of quickly, I know I'm sorry to make you click so furiously, sir. Okay. But right out of Azure Monitor, our very close relative, kind of a cousin, Azure Site Recovery, right? So we have, I think
they are cousins from a different family, but that's okay.
Exactly. What did they say? The brother from a different mother.
Yeah, something like that.
It has to rhyme.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good segue. We have so many things. We have to practice all of these segues. But this is one of the things that we love, is a talk about Azure Site
It is.
Recovery. It's to be very honest, one of the applications that I did start working on Azure, and I think I passed that passion to you as well. And now we have rollup
ASR
53.
is a lifesaver.
It is. It's, oh my God.
Yeah. So update rollup 53 now available January 2021, and this is GA, right?
Yeah.
So now one of the bigger challenges that we have around big agent releases with ASR is that we have some manual actions that are typically required,
Yes.
right? So test this out. Just because it's in GA doesn't mean don't test. Test it out before you're going to roll it out to your full prod. Hopefully you have something in dev test. If not, please create one. You can even use whatever means necessary, different free subscriptions, trial subscriptions, different things. Talk to your CSP or just your Microsoft rep even, and find out how to do a dev test environment and play with it and figure out how to get in there. So test out your ASR. But this is a big upgrade, right? So
It is.
this is the one that will do all of the on-prems, and even when you're in a different cloud, you can install this onto the VM and use Azure as part of your DR,
Yes.
right? So Azure Site Recovery is a big deal.
It is.
It's definitely one we want to test. I really do want to emphasize that. I don't know. What do you want to add to that?
What I want to add on this is, as we mentioned on our rollup update 52 a few episodes back, this is an enhancement and some of the fixes in this case, but it's all of this rollup, right? It's going from everything, from the agent that you have on the recovery service agent. So in this case, the agent that you have on the VMs that you are having, on the hypervisors, either Hyper-V or VMware in this case, and even from the portal, okay, you need to update everything. And that's the part that you need to update. You need to be on the same page, okay? So if you update in this case, and it's the recommendation that I think we did on the last podcast that we mentioned, the Azure Site Recovery rollup 52, is remember that starting updating on the portal and going from the portal down until you go into the agents on the VM.
Exactly.
Okay, so starting on the portal, then going to your recovery, your in this case Site Recovery mobile agent as well, because this will update everything. Okay. And should be on the same version. That's another.
Yeah, and that's important to note, right? So, so when you start at the portal, you have to do the top down. Otherwise, you end up with agent different agent numbers, and then we end up with connectivity problems, incompatibility, and that can impact your recoverability with ASR.
And it's not only that, because last time we mentioned this, a few weeks after the rollup update 52, one of my customers says that a few machines were not able, or they got an alert on the portal that they were not able to synchronize anymore.
That's correct.
And one of the first thing that I did ask was, did you update for the rollup 52? He said yes. Did you went to top bottom? I said yes. But apparently it was a failure updates on these few machines that they were protecting, and they were not able to synchronize anymore. Sometimes you see it depending on the configuration that you have, and sometimes you don't see it that happen. But if you see it, remember, if you listen to this podcast, now you are covered. You will not happen with you. That's a good thing. And thank you for once again for listening.
That's right. We guarantee it or your money back, right? We will refund admission. No problem
we will refund your time spending with listening to this podcast. No worries.
We'll get the crayons out. We'll write up the receipts. It's fine.
Okay.
So kind of staying along those lines of GA, I think up next on the menu, we have Azure Log Analytics, now generally available in Germany West Central, UAE North, and Switzerland West.
Yes.
Yeah, so Log Analytics is one of my kind of favorite toys slash products.
Slash features.
It's really fun to use, right?
It
Because it collects so much data in Log Analytics, and of course, then you use it using the Azure Data Explorer. You can go in and you can write the queries and actually pull some really interesting findings out of the logs. But again, it's how all of these products and services integrate together. And not everything comes out in every region all at once, right?
No.
That's a lot. And as we occasionally get the privilege to announce, Azure is always adding new regions, right? So we
are
talked
adding
about,
region and we are servicing the region. And these ones are important due to the fact that we are collecting logs, we are collecting information about the service, and we are, in this case, with data sovereignty, because we are collecting information and we can store on these regions. So it's really important. It's really important for that. Now that's a little bit more complaint. And now one of the things that I have to mention, there is no podcast that we're doing on Azure Centric, especially on this Azure Weekly, that we don't talk about this guy. Azure Automation. It's now available on Switzerland West. And I think it's like, there are two topics that we mention every single podcast. One of them is this Azure Automation. That is awesome. That now we can go every single part we're going on Switzerland West. And the other one is the public preview. But this...
He's right, folks. He's right. We cook from the same recipe a lot. And thank goodness. We can't automate the conversation, but we can use automation for a lot of other tooling,
exactly.
right? So looks like Switzerland is really growing. And that's actually really cool because I think it's kind of supporting that whole EU growth, right?
Absolutely.
So we've seen a lot of growth, a lot of sustainable new data centers coming in the kind of the European region. And I think that that's really cool because they had a huge burst about 3 years ago in that region, and now we're seeing it again. It's kind of like a renewed excitement about cloud computing and cloud resources, right? So I think that's really awesome.
Not only that, Switzerland, as you know, it's a very big in financial services, right? And be able to do it on Azure Automation. I know that's not the main thing, but it's one of the biggest. Be able to have Azure Automation on all of those clients that they have over there, it's key. I don't know why the screen is flickering. I apologize for that, but let's try to see if we can prevent this moving on to the next topic.
No worries. It's a topic change. That's why it just wasn't happy about all of the Swiss innovation, I guess.
Probably.
That's fine.
He didn't like
Send us
chocolate. Exactly. I was saying that probably he's chocolate allergic and he wants to move on. But that's...
Can tell it's supper time. We're thinking about chocolates. It's fine. Yeah. It's fine. So now up next, we have one more public preview for prevent shared key authorization on Azure storage accounts. Now, this is a really cool one, right? Because now we want to prevent shared key auth, right?
Yeah.
So I know we both use Azure Storage for so many things. I think sometimes we might overuse Azure Storage. There's a lot of different kind of PaaS and SaaS options that are really good. And certainly Azure Storage is like top tier for me. I implement it anytime I have an opportunity to do so, just because it's so robust, right? But it's also very secure. And, here we are now, we can use the account access key for shared key authorization, but this is going to prevent kind of abuse of that, right?
Exactly. So now you have the possibility of disallow these requests, okay, to the storage account that they are authorized with the shared key, because before you couldn't.
Exactly.
And so
right.
the only way to doing this or be able to do this is to replace the shared key with another one. Now you can
That's
go
right.
there and disallow. So means that authorized requests for that specific storage account, you can go there and disallow. So it's another level. Of course, you can disallow and change. You can do all of those things, but the only option that you have before this or this on this public preview is to replace with a new shared key, and then you don't know what is the effect that can be in this case, and you can crumble all of the things that you have on your environment, right? And that's the part that it's a little bit dangerous on that specifically.
It can be. I use the shared keys sometimes for different integrations, and I especially use the shared keys when I'm doing tutorials and things, videos and articles and all that stuff, because it's easy to do, it's nice, and it's kind of fun to demonstrate. But they can be dangerous on production accounts. So if you're using those in production, it's fine. They're very secure. But replicate what you have in your dev test. Use that because it is a preview option, and test it in non-prod so that you're not going to impact anything. Especially storage accounts, changing things can be very impactful and a little bit dangerous, like you say, right?
Absolutely. Moving on to the next one, another public preview, in this case on Azure Log Analytics, that now it's on UAE Central and Japan West. So
exactly, I feel like I'm missing traveling on the last half of our podcast here. There's a lot of all these data centers that are in these beautiful countries.
Do you know what is this? CI/CD. This is literally CI/CD, continuous improvement, continuous deployment. So we're starting to see a lot of that every time I was talking, and I was talking that to my wife right now, because she's doing a white paper on Azure DevOps, for example, and I was talking that it's so important, the CIDC methodology that we're seeing over here. So we see that they already announced general availability for that, and now we're starting to see that it's public preview for another region. So basically, they are deploying this across the entire platform, and this is again, it's Azure is growing on size and on service available for each region, even small regions like, for example, Japan. And I'm saying it's small because it's a small country in dimensions.
Maybe compared to like US West or something, it's probably a bit not as utilized.
Yeah, exactly.
But in Japan, certainly they have multiple regions in Japan, right? So that means that there's enough business there to support many regions and data centers and things, right?
Absolutely.
It's really cool, and you're right, because that CI/CD is really important, and that's kind of one of the ongoing themes that you always see with Azure is it's always improving and they're always updating things, and that's really critical.
Yeah.
Enough said, right?
Next one is one of my favorites, and is one of the things that I was expecting in this case. That is the public preview automatic cluster upgrades in Azure Kubernetes Services. So this means that now, with this public preview, of course, on the AKS cluster, you can automatically upgrade the version, the user-defined version, on a regular basis. So means that you can automate this way faster, and you can even specify between multiple upgrade channels, such as the lasted rapid minor version to an older stable version, or old stable minor version to the last patch version. So automatically you upgrade this. So it's the way that if you want to upgrade the clusters, you can do this by using all the channels that you have regarding your AKS. Really cool to see. Again, it's public preview. This one you need to be very careful because if you are using this,
mess up a prod cluster for sure.
Completely. And it's not only that, you can even put this as working as marvelous without any errors. But when we mention this in our podcast in the future on the general availability, we have to remember that everything that you deploy under this preview, a public preview, you need to redeploy everything again. I just want to get that out once again so we can mention. But it's a lot of public previews. And talking about CI/CD, here it is.
Yeah, here we go. Azure boards, kaboom, right?
Kaboom.
So new enhancements to delivery plans 2.0.
Oh yeah.
So kind of a big thing. I know I've been using Azure boards for different projects that I'm on, and it's actually super, super useful. So if you're not familiar with it, jump in, check it out. What is it? Dev Labs. You can get into Azure boards,
Azure DevOps,
and test it out in your dev test. Yeah, DevOps. Thank you. I think I said dev boards because I'm thinking of Azure boards as I look at the screen.
Do you know one thing that I like about this, and I'm using this, and this was presented by my good friend George Maya, that is also an MVP and is using a lot of this, is a lot of your tasks you can automate on over here on Azure boards. So even if you have like a lot of those things that you need to do it, if you create Azure boards, for example, of updating, or if you're doing all of this with all the steps that you need to do it, just going there. He told me that he wrote, in this case, he master thesis for his master with Azure boards. So all the things that he did, and he was using Azure. That's really geek. He's using Azure DevOps to just basically work on this master thesis. And he says,
I think I need to brush up on my Portuguese so that I can understand these things a little bit more when you guys are speaking to them, because that sounds freaking awesome. I'm gonna be.
Man, it's like I always use Azure boards, to be very honest, and this is using the technology available to you on a ways that you never think about it. I never think about it to just doing that. And after I talked to him and they explained me and he showed me, in this case, Azure boards and a way that he used Azure DevOps to just wrote his thesis, or to just kind of going on everything that he was doing and reviewing and putting everything over there. It makes totally sense because the tool is there, the technology is there, everything is there. Why not using? It's not like, oh, you need to use this on CI/CD. No, you need to be innovative. The tool it's available, the technology is available there, and I think it's a great example how you can use this for your own. So right now, I'm preparing my racing season. Guess what I'm using? Azure boards.
OneNote.
No, I improved that. I was using OneNote, but now I can use Azure boards because I can have all the complexity and I can see all the cascade that I cannot see on OneNote.
Absolutely. Yeah, joking aside, it is a really powerful and important tool.
Absolutely.
I'm actually using it right now. So we one of the teams I'm on, we use it to build our story. Exactly. Right. So all of the tasks that we work on together and individually as a team, it comes together in Azure board. But all of the changes, the decisions, all of those things come together in Azure board, and then it's used to build the story of what we're working on for the project. And that's really critical because it brings all of the documentation together in one spot. So I really love all of the things. It's kind of, you're only limited by your own imagination. And then, you can, listen to other Azure board users and kind of hear how they use it and get some new ideas and take advantage of it. Very powerful tool.
Absolutely.
So I think the end is near, and we have what we maybe call a bonus topic today, right? So we usually do not talk about IoT, but I said, Marcos, I think we should in this case. And it just so happened it was released today as well. But it's important because this one, it can be very impactful, right? So anything that the Microsoft Azure updates blogs talk about with action required at the start, we need to pay attention to, even if it doesn't talk to something we're using, because we should share it with our coworkers and other professionals. So that's what we're doing a little bit with this today, right? So upgrade IoT Hub IP filter before 1st of February 2022. Now, they're giving us 1 year notice
More than
to
1
do
year,
this.
right?
Yeah, by a couple of weeks, perhaps here, a week and a half, right? But we need to kind of throw it in as an honorable mention, because if it's not upgraded from previous versions to the current version today, in 1 year, it's going to be deprecated and it will cause outage, right? There'll be interruption to service. So that's why we're talking about this. So if you're using IoT Hub IP filters, please go and visit Azure Updates, azure.microsoft.com, and go into your portal, go look at the news update, and dig deeper and make sure if it does apply to you, review it and take some actions, right? You have some time. It's not a panic. You have over a year, but this is their first shot across the bow, I guess we call this, right? The warning, like, hey, if you're using this product, go and update it, please. So there we go. I feel much better. Thank you for letting
You're
me
very
get that
welcome,
one
and it's a very good point of it. We do talk about a little bit of IoT, not particular on IT Hub, because again, it's not something that we are very familiar with. It's just me just talking in this case, or just using this in conjunction with other friends of mine, and just a kind of more entertainment in my lab that I have. And I have here this time my good friend, let me see the camera, my MS chip IoT dev kit. That's what I use, and that's why important in this case. It's a old one.
I would
it's
love
not
to get a couple new ones.
It's not
of
the
those.
sphere.
Yeah,
I have to upgrade to a sphere,
that.
but that's okay. Yes. So we finally arrive at the end. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for your time. Thank you once again.
Thank you
for subscribing the channel. And if you don't, please do that. You see that, the animation. Not only the animation on the screen, you see Andrew's animation as well. Do you want to do it again? Once again? Let's do it once again.
I sat still for almost an hour. Okay. I'm ready.
1, 2, 3. Let's go. Oh, there. Don't forget to just give thumbs up. Okay. Comment, dislike, like, whatever it is. We really want is your feedback. If you like it,
thumbs up,
tell us what you like it.
We love that everybody's hung out this long, especially on these busy update weeks, right? Really cool. We do this because we love hearing about everybody, the different things, and I really love that somebody's speaking up and saying, hey, I feel very engaged by what we're doing. That's awesome. That's so exciting for us, and thank you for tuning in. We just
if you don't like our jokes, send us an email, and we tell your jokes without any problem.
Send us some new material. We need some new transition jokes in between the topics on busy weeks.
Absolutely. Right? It's like we are CI/CD, continuous improving, continuous deployment, in this case, jokes. So please help us out in this case without any problem, and you will able to see what's going on. So once again, Andrew, thank you so much for being part of this. Once again, we're enjoying a lot, and thank you for listening. One of the biggest podcasts. It's not a record, I have to say, but it's one of the biggest podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe. Again, I'm gonna pass again. I love this button. Don't forget to subscribe and like and comment. And see you on the next episode. Bye.